Today I'm going to be refuting the claim that marijuana is one of the most dangerous drugs that can cause multiple problems or fatal to a human's health. My advocates' secondary claims are: 1, access to medical marijuana has resulted in abuse as a medical relief. 2, marijuana can harm a human's health long term. 3, marijuana can also affect a human's performance on a daily basis. My response to my advocate's first secondary claim is that marijuana has already been easy to access. The only benefit people get from signing up for a medical marijuana card is being able to smoke it legally and not get a ticket. I wanted to point out that she clearly states her bias by saying, "I feel that people tend to abuse marijuana, so I'm going against it." But the only evidence she actually provides that people abuse marijuana was a hypothetical example of a person going to their doctor and giving fake symptoms to receive a medical marijuana card. According to CBS News and Procon, as of 2011, there were only 500,000 people on the medical marijuana card in California. Compared to the rest of the population of California, which is 38 million people, that seems a little. Furthermore, CBS News states that a survey done by the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse shows more than a third of teens say they could find marijuana in just a few hours. The survey also reports that teens could find marijuana easier than they can purchase alcohol. Lastly, she mentions that people on medical marijuana end up being addicted. I don't necessarily see this as a bad thing if they actually need the medication to fight their illness. For glaucoma, people with glaucoma use marijuana because glaucoma causes them to suffer severe pain and sudden loss of vision. Moving on to my advocate's secondary claim, my response is that there are also drugs that are easily accessible over the counter that can harm a human's health. She describes the side effects and health risks of using marijuana, but if you look at the warning labels of any over-the-counter medication, the health risks and side effects aren't really that safe either. If you look at advertisements on television, at first they start off really slow, but then towards the end, they speed up all the health risks, so you don't really hear them. For example, I went on Viagra's website to find their side effects. Using Viagra can result in an erection lasting for hours, bringing ears, dizziness, sudden loss or decrease in hearing, sudden decrease in vision or loss of vision in both eyes, irregular heartbeat, stroke, heart attack, and even death. Death? It's a major side effect. Finally, my response to my advocate's last secondary claim is drugs are aimed to have an effect on you no matter what. If drugs are if they don't affect you in any way, you would be wasting your money on drugs. For example, we take Advil to cure our pain and headaches. Hospitals use drugs as well to keep patients alive. She says that the use of marijuana can lead to unhealthy relationships. However, I don't see a correlation because you can have an unhealthy relationship sober. And if anything, alcohol would give you an unhealthy relationship. According to Journal IE, alcohol kills 3.3 million people worldwide each year, more than AIDS and tuberculosis combined. Alcohol, unlike marijuana, can lead to more violence. I have personally experienced this. I've seen many of my uncles beat their wives after drinking a lot. And recently, last month, my uncle was in prison for murdering his wife, and when they found him, he was still drunk. In conclusion, marijuana is not one of the most dangerous drugs that can cause most health problems or fatal to a human's health because we have far more easily accessible and dangerous drugs. Furthermore, there was no statistical evidence provided of how many people actually died from marijuana. Thank you.
All right, the structural things are all good. Signpost on the first point. You basically are arguing that, I guess it's the medical marijuana argument there, that there's an argument that says that because medical marijuana is available, it makes it more readily available. And you're dismissing this by suggesting that access is already easy for people who want to have access to it, that the number of people who are using it in California is relatively small given the total population. I think that that's a good statistic to use to show, and by the way, you ought to point out that medical marijuana has been available in the state since 1996. So 18 years we've had this, and we've only got 500,000 people who have these medical marijuana cards out of a population of 38 million. I think that would be another way of mitigating that argument. I do think you had a challenge also to the advocate's evidence on that point, and one of the things that you want to do on these points is make sure that you can contrast the argument you're making versus the one that they're making, and I think that this would really benefit your position here because the contrast to what you say is nothing versus the data that you've got seems to be substantially in your favor. On the second point, you're attempting to diminish the significance of marijuana, especially in its medical context, by showing that it's not any more risky or harmful than other medications might be. I think your example of Viagra was entertaining. It's got a lot of negative things, and death as a side effect is a pretty substantial side effect. Once again, we need the contrast to what the advocate's argument was on this. I don't remember what all the side effects were, what the likelihood of any of them was. I don't remember that death was one of them, and I think that that's one of those contrasts. You do kind of hint at, at the end when you're summarizing, they don't provide, the advocate didn't provide any evidence that quantified deaths related to marijuana, but you do have some information that suggests that any over-the-counter medicine could potentially have this effect. By the way, I'm not sure that Viagra is an over-the-counter. I shouldn't say it that way because it's still prescription based. And then on your last claim, that was a little bit confusing. I think the argument here seems to be that people under the influence of marijuana make a series of bad choices. And your argument seems to be, well, people under the influence of alcohol make a series of bad choices too. That might be true. I'm not sure that it mitigates your claim in this particular context. The other places where you were using such a comparison make sense because marijuana is being used for medical purposes in this situation, and so comparing it to other drugs makes a lot of sense. In this particular case, though, it's not quite the same, and I think that as a consequence, your attempt to mitigate the significance of marijuana and its effect on how people function simply suggests that we have multiple threats. We've got people who get drunk and we got people who get high, and neither of them is all that desirable. The fact that somebody gets high instead of getting drunk, I'm not sure that that's a beneficial kind of thing, or that it's not a threat. Sorry about your aunt. That's just that's a little weird. I'm sorry that you had a dramatic example like that. My goodness. All right. Thank you.